Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recaps. So, the month of October is over, and my god, it was a month. It was quite the month, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because unlike many of the months I've covered recently, especially in the last few months, things have actually been pretty positive. In fact, things haven't been this positive since, in my eyes, late 2019. At least when it comes to the hit to miss ratio with these movies. And another thing, that October box office was the biggest of the last 2 years, the biggest since February of 2020, by a lot, actually. It beat July, which how many times have you ever heard that where October box office beats July box office? Exactly. Never. It's not supposed to happen. But Hollywood decided that October would be a blockbuster month, and that's what happened. And just another little thing, the October box office total was actually more or less on the same level as other Octobers in like the past decade. I mean, sure, it wasn't the biggest October ever. I mean, we've had much better Octobers in the past, 2018, 2019, 2014 too. But it was at least close enough to normalcy when compared to all the other months, which are like made like half as much as as other months in the past few years. This one was a lot closer to the usual average, so that's great. It means we are definitely moving in the right direction. And as for the actual movies that came out this past month, we had quite a few success stories, which is nice, but at the same time, we've had quite a few bombs too, some pretty embarrassing bombs. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, I think the positives outweigh the negatives, which is something I haven't said in a very long time, so it feels good to say that again. But anywho, let's begin with October. October 1st, we had three movies come out: Adam's Family 2, Many Saints of Newark, and Venom Let There Be Carnage. So we're going alphabetical order. Let's start with Adam's Family 2. Now, I predicted this would open between 15 and 20 million. I knew it wasn't going to open as much as its predecessor, which opened with 30, mainly because it's a sequel. Not mention, well, it's not just a sequel; it's a sequel that nobody really wanted, and the fact that family movies have been doing pretty terrible in the pandemic, and it was getting a simultaneous PVOD release, which I thought would cut into its ticket sales a bit. So I thought 15 to 20 was reasonable. And guess what? I was right on the money because it opened with $17 million. And it's now made 53 million up to this point, which has actually surpassed my original prediction of like a 50 million total. So I'm happy about that. And when it comes to family movies in the pandemic, this is ever so slightly better than average. So I would consider it a relative success. I mean, it also helps that it was cheap, so that definitely helps. But I would consider it a relative success. I mean, sure, I could say, oh, well, it didn't make as much as his predecessor. Well, first of all, nobody expected that to happen. And it's not like expectations were great for this movie in the first place. It wasn't exactly a movie with an event status. But for what it is and for what it had to deal with, and for the genre it's in, I would say it was successful. Not an overwhelming success, but relatively successful. I would say that. So congratulations, Adam's Family 2. You didn't embarrass yourself. So, congratulations. Now, on to a movie that did embarrass itself. The Many Saints of Newark. Yikes. With my prediction, because I was so wrong with many of these HBO Max movies, I thought I was being cautious. I thought it would be between 5 to 10 million because that's what I predicted for Malignant. That's what I predicted for Cry Macho. I thought the same would apply to this. Well, turns out I wasn't cautious enough because it didn't even open to 5 million. It opened less than 5 million, only like 4.6. And its legs have been god awful. It's only made $8 million. It hasn't even like its opening weekend accounted for like almost 57% of its total gross. That's horrible. That's abysmal. I mean, just look at its hold here. Uh, like his second weekend dropped like 69%. They didn't even show this third weekend, probably because they were embarrassed. And now it's made. Oh, they have a weekly. It lost all its theaters pretty much. So yeah, this is just abysmal. Easily one of the worst HBO Max performances out of all of them. Like easily. And why did this happen? Well, I have theories. I didn't mention this in the original video because I was super tired when I made it. But two movies that could be easily compared to this would be the movie adaptations of Sex and the City and Entourage. And with Sex and the City, that movie had a lot of pent up demand when the series ended, had a strong female audience who wanted to watch it immediately. And when it came out in 2008, it was a huge hit, massive hit, one of the bigger movies of that year. And then it got a sequel, which didn't do as good, but it still made quite a bit of cash. So that's like the positive side of an HBO movie. On the flip side, you had Entourage, which also came out years after the show ended, but that did nowhere near as well. That only made like 30 million domestic, like what, like 50, 60 million worldwide. Very weak. And so with Many States of New York, it was either going to be a Sex in the City or it was going to be an Entourage, and it could even be an Entourage. It did worse than Entourage, which is really shocking because I thought The Sopranos had a phenomenal reputation. I thought there would be at least a decent amount of fans who'd want to watch it, but I was dead wrong. It seems like nobody gives a shit about The Sopranos anymore, judging by these numbers. Or they all watched it on HBO Max because guess what's also on HBO Max? The Sopranos. So I guess maybe the mindset was like, well, I can watch The Sopranos on HBO Max, and then I can also watch the movie too on HBO Max. So why not just do that instead of going to the theater? And I think that's probably what happened here. So yeah, I goofed on this prediction, especially since I thought it would make like 15 to 20 million total. It didn't even make half of that. So yeah, this whole thing was a yikes. It's not the only yikes of this video, but yeah, that was a real L on my part. Then the last movie that came out the first weekend of October, the big one, the biggest movie of the month actually, which I didn't quite think would happen. Venom Let There Be Carnage. Now, admittedly, I kind of lowballed this. Well, I think some people lowballed it more than me, but my prediction was 60 to 70 million. I made that prediction because, you know, sequels have not been doing very hot this year. Many of them have fallen short of their predecessors. I thought this would do the same. Uh, and the fact that the original Venom's reputation isn't super great. I mean, some people like it, but some people hate it. And I feel like it would have like we would see a similar situation with the Suicide Squad, where the sequel would have to pay for its predecessor's sins. That's what I thought would happen to some extent. But no, no, that's not what happened at all. It opened to $90 million. That's that's more than the first movie, which opened with 80 million. That's more than Black Widow, which opened to 80 million. And it's the biggest opening weekend easily since Rise of Skywalker. Even before then, Frozen 2. Like that's wild. Who predicted that Venom Let There Be Carnage would have a bigger opening weekend than Black Widow, F9? Like, who thought of that? Because not me. I was not a part of that camp. I was not part of that group. But it did it. It did it. It's the biggest opening weekend of the year. Like, although that'll likely be surpassed by a certain Spooderman. That's all I'll say about that. Its legs haven't been too great. It fell off pretty hard in the second weekend, but it managed to recover after that. It's recovered enough to where it should be able to reach 200 million. So it's way ahead of my 150 to 160. And when it does reach 200 million, it'll only be the second movie of this year to do so. The only other movie to do it was Shang-Chi. So that's fantastic. That means the superhero movie is not dead, not by a long shot. And it means that for some, well, some people might think this, but some people believe like for some godforsaken reason, people love the Venom movies. Maybe because people like goofiness. Like these movies are hella goofy, both of them. They they do some weird things, and people seem to dig it. And not to mention the whole post-credit scene. I mean, is it a spoiler? I mean, the movie's been out for over a month. No, I won't say anything. I'll mention it when when I do my Spider-Man No Way Home prediction. I'll mention it then, because by that point it should be available on PVOD or something like that. I won't mention it now, but yeah, that post-credit scene got a lot of people hyped and intrigued, and you know and yeah, so that probably helped a bit. And then we got the question, what about Venom 3? I know Sony, they've carved out a date the first weekend of October 2023. It would make all the sense in the world to put Venom 3 on that date. They haven't announced it yet, but it only seems logical to do it because it's making money. So why stop this train? And yes, I know overseas it's not doing as great as the first. Worldwide, at this moment, it's about half as much as the first. The thing about that is that, well, overseas has been very wonky in the past year. Not to mention, the first Venom had a China release, it did gangbusters over there, like $269 million, which is insane. This doesn't have a release date there yet. And if you subtract, you know, the China box office from the first Venom, it would have only made like close to $600 million. So it's not that far off, really. And plus, the movie only cost 110. It's gonna make like 4 times as much. So it's not a flop in any sense of the word. So, and plus, I already said sequels aren't doing as good as their predecessors. So I would consider it a relative success in the grand scheme of things. It's gonna make a profit. It had the biggest opening weekend of the year. It's gonna make 200 million domestic. So by all accounts, really, I call it a hit. I call it a success. I call it a victory because 2021 really needs victories. It needs a lot of victories, and I'm glad they're coming now. I mean, better late than never, but yeah, I'm glad we are seeing I guess the resurgence of like the big money blockbuster. So yeah, that was the first weekend of October. Unfortunately, things slide down from there. Like Venom 2, so we start with 90 million that weekend. And now we go to No Time to Die, which wasn't so lucky. No Time to Die, No Time to Die, No Time to Die. Okay. I did goof on my prediction. I did goof. I was a little too optimistic. I thought it would open with $75 million. I thought it would do better than Spectre. That didn't happen. It opened with 55 million, which, although isn't terrible by any means, not great at all. And it's only made 136 million domestic. It's made 600 million worldwide. I mean, well, we really need to talk about domestic. Domestically, it will no doubt be the worst performing movie of the Daniel Craig Bond era, which is kind of terrible when you think about it. When you think about where this series started, we went from Casino Royale to Quantum of Solace, which took a creative step back. Then we had Skyfall, which just destroyed all previous Bond records. And then Spectre, which did worse, but everybody expected it to do worse. And then we have this, this is supposed to be the grand finale, the final send off to Daniel Craig, his swan song. The fact that it did the worst out of the bunch is pretty disheartening because, I watched the movie. I thought it was fine. I thought it had some really good action. And, you know, yeah, I thought it was a good movie. So why did it underperform like this? Well, there's several reasons. One, that older audience, I mean, they showed up, but not as much as I thought they would. So that probably hurt. Two, the competition. I think coming out right after Venom 2 was a mistake because it actually hurt both movies. It hurt Venom 2's second weekend, and then it hurt No Time to Die's first weekend. And at that point, nobody really won that war. So, yeah, that didn't help matters at all. And the third, I think with like the PR for this thing was just bad. It was mainly hijacked by the whole um Lashana Lynch's character. Where is she? She's not even on here. Darn it. Yeah, her character being like the new 007 because in the movie Bond retired, he left, and so his number was given to Lashana Lynch. And so people automatically say, "Oh, she's the new James Bond." They made James Bond both black and a female. Cringe. And then they went on like a bunch of like outrage videos, getting those outrage clicks for years, even though that's not what happens in the movie at all. Full context. As someone who has seen the movie, that's not how it goes. And it's just so stupid. It's such a stupid, unnecessary controversy that the internet conjured up. And it annoys me to death. The same thing happened with Venom 2, actually, where there was like this whole big, for like a quick moment, a hoopla over, I think Andy Serkis, the director of the movie, he said there was like this scene in the movie, like a rave scene, that he described as Venom's, coming out. And a lot of people interpret it as, oh, they made Venom gay. Cringe. And then if you actually watch the damn movie, that's not what happens at all. In full context of that scene, Venom is at a rave, and he's separated from Eddie, and he talks about how basically his speech, like the people there at the rave, they don't know, they interpreted his speech as, oh, he's coming out of the closet, when that's not what happens at all. They have no clue what Venom is talking about, but that's what they hear. And yeah, the same thing happens here where people took it out of context and made it into something that it's not. And with the whole Lashana Lynch 007 thing. And it just it annoys me to death. It really does. But it happened, and it's just ugh, I don't even want to think about it anymore. It just pisses me off. But like most Bond movies, and made most of its money overseas. I mean, 600 million in this day and age is pretty damn good. I think the only Hollywood movie that's beaten it is F9. That only made 700 million. And sure, this movie was hella expensive, costing $250 million. That doesn't even include advertising, and the advertising they spent before the movie got delayed a bunch, delayed by like half a year and a half. So, I don't. Yeah, it's with this movie, I can't call it a success because it did worse than all the other Bond movies, the Daniel Craig Bonds, domestically by a lot. They'll probably make like 150 million total, which I mean, for the year, that's pretty good. For the pandemic era, that's pretty good. But for Daniel Craig Bond, that's not so good. So I can't call it a real hit, but I can't call it a real failure either, because again, second biggest movie of the year worldwide after F9 will be one of the biggest movies of the year domestically, no matter what. Its opening weekend was one of the biggest of the year. It was one of the biggest for October, actually. So, yeah, this is squarely in that weird middle ground where I, well, okay, I won't call it a failure, but I think disappointment is more accurate. I think it's super accurate. I would call it a disappointment. That doesn't mean it's a failure. It's just it underwhelmed. It wasn't as big as I thought it would be, but it didn't completely shit the bed. That's how I would describe it. So yeah, that was No Time to Die. Uh, I mean, I should I even mention this spoiler? I mean, most of you probably know it by now. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, the title kind of insinuates it a bit, but yeah, plus we know this was Daniel Craig's last Bond movie, so it's not even a spoiler, really. But yeah, James Bond, he died at the end of the movie. So I mean, they had to get rid of Daniel Craig somehow, and I don't know where they're gonna go with the series. Maybe I know they're gonna cast someone else, but we probably won't know who that is until like within a few years. So yeah, that whole thing just felt so weird, and just ugh, No Time to Die was kind of a weird movie, but I liked it. And I kind of liked Venom Let There Be Carnage too, even though I thought it was pretty goofy at times. But yeah, anywho, yeah, No Time to Die, that happened. Now, October 15th, things get interesting. So first, Halloween Kills, the sequel to Halloween 2018. Hmm, this is a complicated one. So, prediction, I predicted it would make 35 to 45. I thought it would make at least half as much as the first movie, at least domestically. Because again, sequels, especially horror sequels, haven't been doing the greatest. There hasn't been a single horror sequel this year to make more than its predecessor, and I thought this would be no different. And it was no different, although it had a very weird trajectory because his opening weekend was super strong, like over 49 million, which is very good for horror. It's very good for, the year. And keep in mind, this included a Peacock release, a simultaneous release on Peacock, which I think a lot of people said. I think this just proves without a shadow of a doubt, nobody uses Peacock. Well, I do, but for different reasons. But yeah, nobody watched it on Peacock. Everyone watched it in a theater because they thought it would be more worth it, I guess. So yeah, it had a great opening weekend, and that's when everything went wrong because its second weekend, ooh boy, it fell 71%. That's inexcusable. That is downright horrific in every sense of the word. That is one of the worst second weekends you can ever have. Really. I mean, 60% is bad enough, but 70? You really need to screw up to get a 70% drop or more. It didn't help that this movie had pretty lackluster reviews and reactions. That probably contributed to that. And then its third weekend, it gets even more weird. It had a nice drop. It stopped the bleeding a bit, mainly because that weekend was Halloween, right? And it did well that day. I think of all the movies that were out, it had like the best drop that day because Halloween can be a very rough holiday for many movies, but Halloween Kills was not one of those movies. And then it just crumbled. Once November started, it crumbled. It's just going to just die off very fast because just like its predecessor, once Halloween is over, it's automatically irrelevant. There's no reason to watch it until the following year. And yeah, at this point, it's not gonna make 100 million. That's a pipe dream at this point. It'll reach 90, but that's as far as it's gonna go. So it's gonna be horribly front loaded, which is not good. Which I think will only mean bad things for its predecessor, no, sequel, Halloween Ends, which comes out next year. But the good news is this movie was super cheap, 20 million. It's made a profit, so it's not even gonna lose anything. But yeah, that those drops just are extremely concerning. I'd be very worried about the sequel. But for what it is, it did well, and plus, it's the biggest movie of the year for an R-rated film. So that's great. Although that'll likely change when Matrix Resurrections comes out in December, but we won't have to worry about that till a while. So yeah, Halloween Kills, that was a weird one, but I would call it a relative success, even though it did way worse than the first. But again, everyone predicted that was gonna happen. So yeah, it's not like expectations were like sky high, like say No Time to Die. So it gets a bit of a pass. All right, what's next? Last Duel. This is our second yikes of the video because my prediction, I thought it would open with over 10 million, 10 to 15, and make 30 million total. That was me being cautiously optimistic because I knew how expensive this movie was. I knew it wasn't going to do great in the first place. So I thought, okay, that's reasonable enough. I mean, it has good reviews. Might have some awards buzz, maybe. It might do okay ish. Well, okay, maybe not okay ish, but it'll not be a complete embarrassment. Well, I was wrong. Dead wrong. Because it didn't even open to it didn't open to 15, it didn't open to 10, it didn't even open to 5. Open with less than 5 actually. 4.7. opening weekend, and its total so far is a little over 10. So I thought it would open with like 10 or more, and it's only made 10 total. That's 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 horrific. There's no there's no way I can spin that into a positive. It's truly terrible. It's absolutely abysmal. It's one of Ridley Scott's worst performing movies ever. So I guess the question is really, actually, it's everyone involved in this cast is one of their worst performing movies ever. So I guess the question is, what happened? What caused this? I have several theories. First theory is the subject matter. This movie is about sexual assault. That's like the main driving force behind the plot. And yeah, sexual assault, rape, that is a huge turnoff for a lot of people. Nobody wants to talk about it ever. So why would anyone want to watch a movie based off on that? When we know it's an automatic turnoff for people. So yeah, I knew the subject matter would severely hurt the movie because people want to go to the movies to like escape from these problems. They don't want to think about these problems, and then you got a movie like this that just shoved that problem in your face, and you're just like, I don't like this. I want to watch something else. Can I watch Venom 2? And yeah, I think the subject matter really killed this movie. But that wasn't the only thing. But I think the subject matter was the biggest problem. Another problem is that a lot of people noted, I think Chris Stuckman, he made a video about why he believes like the last duel shouldn't have bombed. And I was reading the comments of that video. One of the things people noted was the lack of real marketing. Some people didn't even know the movie was coming out, which is really bad. And yeah, like the marketing for this wasn't great. It didn't like, this being a Disney Fox movie, well, 20th Century Studios movie. Disney didn't push it very hard. It was the complete opposite of Free Guy. Free Guy, they pushed that like there was no tomorrow because they knew they had something with that. With this, they didn't care. They were just like, whatever, just throw it out there because they had no faith in it. And it showed with their lack of advertising. And another person, I think it was another comment in that video, noted that the competition was just too severe, which is very true. I mean, this month, October had Venom 2, it had No Time to Die, Halloween Kills, Dune, all opening back to back to back to back. And this movie, what chance did it have in comparison to those four? Not much, I could tell you that. It wasn't going to stand out all that much because the adult market was pretty much, you know, filled up by way more appealing movies. And this movie just wasn't going to succeed. But I thought it would at least do a bit better than this. So, yeah, this was a huge L. It only made like a third of my total prediction. So that's pretty terrible for me. And yeah. Well, at least Ridley Scott, he'll have another chance with House of Gucci, which comes out this month in November. But that should do way better than this. But yeah, this was bad for everyone. Nobody benefited from this. So that was the last duel. So October 22nd, Dune. Oh boy. Where did Dune. Oh, Dune. For once, for once, my prediction wasn't a total bust. I mean, sure, you know, several movies I've mentioned already in this video. Venom 2 and Halloween Kills, I lowballed a bit and I was proven wrong. This one I also lowballed, but this one I was more scared for this movie than the other two. I thought those other two would do at least fine. This I was very worried about. Hell, my thumbnail for the video I made on this movie was I'm very worried about this movie. And for good reason. Because this movie had a lot going against it. I mean, it was a 2.5 hour slow burn sci fi epic based off not so accessible source material that was being released on HBO Max the same day. A whole experiment that has had very few success stories and many failures. And not even like small failures. We're talking high profile failures. I mean, we're talking shoot, Wonder Woman 1984, The Little Things, Judas and the Black Messiah, uh, Those Who Wish Me Dead, In the Heights, Space Jam 2, The Suicide Squad, Reminiscence, um, Malignant, Cry Macho, and Many Saints Newark, all failing miserably. The only ones that I don't consider real flops were Tom and Jerry, Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, and Conjuring 3. And that's it. So the hit to miss ratio was overwhelmingly leaned towards miss. So that made me just worried. I was like frantically just like looking at his box office, like its opening weekend, like every day, wondering, oh God, are people actually going to watch this movie? And to my genuine satisfaction, people watched the movie. People decided, you know what? I'm not going to watch this on HBO Max. I'm going to go out to the theater and watch this on the biggest screen possible. And that's what happened. So my prediction was 30 to 35 million for its opening weekend. It opened with 41. So I was very happy about that. Very, very pleased. And I think I didn't mention a total, but I thought it would do perform on par with. I gotta look at. Well, I guess I can look it up really easily with the Denis Villeneuve's last movie, Blade Runner 2049, right here. That, like Dune, was based off an 80s property, written based off books written in the 60s. Got 21st century upgrade by the same guy, the same studio, the same month, because both came out in October. But with Blade Runner 2049, it did terrible. It opened with like 32 million, made like 90 million total, 250 million total on a budget of 185. That's horrible. Even though that movie is great and it deserves so much better, but still, that's a downright disaster. And so I was worried that Doom would, follow the same path, but it didn't because it's done way better overseas. By the way, it's already made more than Blade Runner 2049 total. It's made over 300 million, so which is where I thought it would land. I was hoping it would land because Dune had a uh weird strategy with its opening because it opened super early overseas in some markets. That way, it was able to get ahead of No Time to Die and Venom 2, which was smart. And then it expanded a bit, you know, and then the big weekend, of October 22nd. That's when it hit America and other markets, and enough people saw it in theaters to make sure it didn't fail miserably. And now it's made over 300 million worldwide, which warms my heart because I think this is a very good movie. Granted, I don't think it's for everyone, but you know, if you're willing to sit through 2.5 hours of a slow burn sci-fi movie, then or if you love, if you have a real appreciation for movies as art, then yeah, this movie is for you. This is your movie. And so far, it's made 78 million domestic. It'll probably end at around 90-ish million. So the same level as Blade Runner 2049, but the positive is that it did way better overseas. So, yeah. And then the most positive news of all, news that I was wondering would even happen or not, this movie is getting a sequel. Yeah. Sequel got announced for 2023, October 20th, 2023. So all the worries about, is this going to get a sequel? Is this going to get a part 2, because this movie was never meant to be a standalone movie. It was meant to be the first of two movies. Hell, like in the opening title card, um had said Dune Part 1, which meant that this was never supposed to be standalone. And because of everything I already said, all the uncertainty about if it would be successful or not, made people worry if it would even get a part 2, and now it's getting one. Because I guess Warner Brothers looked at the box office and were like, all right, good enough, make that part 2. And now we're getting it, and it makes me very happy, because if it didn't get a part 2, oh man, the internet would have been a blaze. It would have been a real ugly day. But they didn't do that. Warner Brothers made a smart decision for once and greenlit part 2. So yeah, but I guess my opinion on the movie, how it did, considering everything it had to deal with HBO Max, with, you know, being, a not so accessible movie for a lot of people, it could have done a whole lot worse. It could have been significantly worse. And it's amazing it made this much at all, really. Especially since how other HBO Max movies have just been complete disasters. So I'm happy this didn't fall into that pit. So yeah, I would consider it a success. I don't care what anyone says. I would consider this a success, just based off everything it had to go through. It's a success in my eyes because we are getting the sequel. So I call it a success, and I'm glad it was successful. Okay, the second movie that came out that weekend, Ron's Gone Wrong. Well, yeah, this was another goof on my part, because I thought it would open with like 10 million. That didn't happen. Only opened with like 7, and it's only made like 14 million so far. It'll probably reach 20, maybe 25. It'll probably be in the realm between 20 and 25, which is weak to say the least. And uh yeah, I mean, I guess you could come up with the excuse, oh, it's a family movie in the pandemic, it wasn't going to do well. But when you really think about it, was this movie ever going to do well in any era? Like, really? Like, it didn't feel like an event at all. Like, there's nothing about it that just screamed, oh, I gotta watch this in the cinema. No, nothing. There's nothing about this that screamed must see. I heard it's good, but nothing about it screamed must see. So I'm not surprised by this. So yeah, like I don't feel much for the movie. I kind of knew this was gonna happen. It didn't help that all the attention was on Dune that weekend, and this was just an afterthought. So yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised by this result. I'm not saddened by this result. But yeah, what happened happened. So that was that weekend. And that's when all the excitement stopped for October, because the next weekend Oh man, we had a smorgasbord of movies come out for the last weekend of October, which was Halloween weekend. And I'm gonna go through these very quickly. I mean, these movies are about to reach their second weekend. Well, they're in the middle of their second weekend, so it's kind of hard to judge them right now. But I'll do my best. So let's go through these quickly so we can end this video. Antlers, a movie that was delayed a bunch. Felt like it got just dumped on this weekend. It barely got any advertising. And its box office is not good. I predicted it would open between the $3 to $5 million, and I was right on the money. It opened with 4, and so far in its first 8 days, it's made 6 million. And because of the competition coming up in November, I don't think it's gonna last much longer than that. And plus, its per theater average is like super weak, so it's not good. It might reach that 10 million I said, but it might not. I don't know. But yeah, I don't consider this to be very good, very strong at all. But on the positive, it did make more than The Night House, so yay, I guess. But yeah, it wasn't good. Yeah, it didn't have a good weekend. Okay, that's that. Then we had Last Night in Soho, which I thought would be the biggest movie of that weekend, but no, that's not what happened. I thought it would open between like $5 to $7 million. Like I knew it wasn't going to be a big hit because, unlike Edgar Wright's last movie, Baby Driver, this wasn't as easily accessible. It's more of a psychological thriller, not as easy of a sell as, you know, a straightforward action movie. And it didn't even reach 5 million. It only reached like 4 million opening weekend. And so far, it's made 6, just like Antlers. But this movie was super front loaded, like to a bizarre degree. Like that's that 31% drop from Friday to Saturday. Jesus Christ, that's terrible. And yeah, I don't think it's gonna reach that 15 million I thought it would reach. It'll be lucky to reach 10 or more. See, that's disappointing. For Edgar Wright, for all you Edgar Wright stands, I thought you'd show up, but apparently you didn't, or you just didn't feel like it. I don't know, but yeah, this is pretty underwhelming. It kind of makes me sad a little bit, but you know, these things happen. But yeah, it made me a bit sad. So that was Last Night in Soho, and then, oh my god, I don't even want to talk about this, but I guess I have to. A Mouthful of Air. Good God, man. My prediction, I thought I was being super low. I was lowballing it as much as I could. I didn't even think it would open to $1 million. So it'd be like 900,000. That was my prediction. Based off lack of marketing, lack of interest, lack of everything. But no, it only opened to $130,000. Yes, you heard that right. $130,000 for the opening weekend. So far, it's made $212,000 total. My final prediction for this movie was 2 to 3 million, and this won't even reach. I'm trying to do the math. It won't even reach like a quarter of that. Maybe not even a fifth of that. That's I. What can I even say? What can anyone say? This is one of the worst predictions ever when it comes to percentages. In fact, I think it's about as bad, if I think it's actually worse than my reminiscence prediction. Believe it or not, I didn't think that would be possible. But I broke my own record apparently. So, Yikes. This is the biggest yikes ever. It's easily the biggest L in the month, but I guess if we're going with really it's hard to pick the big L of the month because many Saints of Newark and The Last Duel were complete embarrassments financially. And well, Ron's Gone Wrong kind of falls into that same category. But this, I would consider this the big L. But if we're going with more mainstream answer, I would pick Last Duel. But yeah, this was one of the worst predictions I've ever made ever. And again, I thought it was already low to begin with, so that was not good. Okay, next up, My Hero Academia World's Heroes Mission. I th- I had a feeling this would do fine because anime's been doing pretty well box office wise in the last few years. Dragon Ball Super Broly did really good. Demon Slayer, the movie, destroyed all expectations this year. I didn't think this would reach those levels, but I thought it would at least do well on its own. And it did do well on its own, to be fair. It opened with 6 million opening weekend, better than my 5 million prediction. And at the end of the day, it will reach my 10 million total prediction. So I'm happy about that. And it just proves without a shadow of a doubt that anime has a fan base, an extremely loyal fan base. And yeah, anime is king when it comes to the box office right now. Because I think at this point, anime is like the only genre that's had 100% success rate in the pandemic. You know, every other genre has had various hits or misses, some more than others. But we've had two big anime movies come out, both were relatively successful. So, well, Demon Slayer was a. It didn't even have to open in the States to be a smash hit because it was the biggest movie ever in Japan. So, yeah. So its US gross was just gravy. But even then, it destroyed all expectations for anime. So yeah, anime is in a very good position right now. And, I know a lot of people are happy about that. I mean, I don't watch anime that much, so I don't have much of an opinion on it, but I'm glad it's doing well. And then last but not least, The French Dispatch. This movie had a weird opening because it opened limited first and then expanded after that. Last time I covered a movie that did that was like what? I think it was 1917. I may be wrong on that. I think there may have been another one after that, but no, there was another one. Emma. Yeah, Emma. That was limited, then went wide. So that was the last movie I ever talked about when it came to that strategy. And this brought it back. I thought it would open between, I thought with like 3 to 4 million for Halloween weekend. That didn't happen. Only opened with like 2.6, which isn't great. I mean, that's not the worst Wes Anderson has ever seen, but yeah, that's not super great. It probably won't reach that 20 million that I predicted. It might reach like 10 to 15, which I mean, for art house movies, that's like a godsend nowadays. It's like head and shoulders above everything else. Because I knew people would watch this movie because it's Wes Anderson. The dude has a hardcore following that would watch his movies no matter what. And the fact that this movie made any real money in like a small, especially in a small number of theaters, shows that, you know, the art house isn't entirely dead. I mean, it will take a while for it to really get going again, but at least this proves that people are willing to watch smaller movies like in a limited amount of theaters because the fact that it opened with like $1 million in 52 theaters when freaking A Mouthful of Air opened with like $130,000 in 800 theaters proves that again people are willing to watch movies like this. And it also helped that it was Wes Anderson, so that definitely helped things. But yeah, that means good things for the art house movies. And that's it for October. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a month. What a month. I still think the positives outweigh the negatives in the grand scheme of things because, as I already said, this was the biggest month of the year, biggest month of the pandemic. Its overall total for October was close enough to the usual average. And, yeah, like we had, hell, like four of the biggest opening weekends of the year came from this month alone, which is remarkable. Even though the success for some of these movies varies a little bit, the fact four of the top 10 openings of the year, four of which came from this month, from October. That's crazy. That would have never happened in any other year, but this year things are just different. But yeah, if I had to say like biggest hit of the month, Venom 2 easily. Um but I guess if we're going like domestically then Venom 2, overseas then No Time to Die. Personally I think Dune is right up there when it comes to what could have happened. Big L of the month from a mainstream perspective, Last Duel. From a dollar perspective, Mouthful of Air easily. And yeah, it was a month to remember. And I'm hoping the good times keep rolling for the rest of the year, but that's not guaranteed. But I can only hope for the best. So that was October. Now November is looking interesting. It's not as, big when it comes to potential blockbusters, but it's still interesting. We got the Eternals, which had a good opening day so far, but that negative word of mouth might kill it a bit. There was Eternals, then there's Spencer, then we got Clifford the Big Red Dog, then Belfast, the Ghostbusters Afterlife, King Richard, then Encanto. I can never pronounce that movie right. Encanto, House of Gucci, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. I don't know if these other two are going to release. I'm not so sure about that. But I guess I'll just mention them anyway. National Champions and For the Love of the Money. But again, I don't know if they're going to release. That's hard to say. But yeah, November is a little light when it comes to releases, but I think it will still be pretty interesting. At least I think so. So, yeah. Any and I think the winner of that month will be the Eternals because duh. But yeah, that's it. That's it. So that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. Want to check out more videos like this? Got playlists on the homepage with all previous recap videos I've done on the channel from pre-pandemic to pandemic. You can see it would be nice if you just looked at all the past recap videos I made for this year because it's been a wild ride, to say the least. I'd start with my December 2020 and January 2021 video and then go on from there. That way you can see how things have changed throughout the year because they started out so horrific and so low that it was honest to God depressing. And now it's like it's almost like those I can't even describe it. It's almost like if some of these movies it feels like the pandemic just never happened. Like some of these movies were open this well without the pandemic. So the fact that they're able to open this well in the pandemic is amazing. And I'm hoping it just keeps getting better. But yeah, if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I've done, you go right ahead. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. I already did prediction videos for Eternals and Spencer. You want to watch those, you can go right ahead. Next week, I gotta do Clifford the Big Red Dog midweek, which is gonna be very weird. And then Belfast, and then Ghostbusters Afterlife, then King Richard, and then Thanksgiving movies. So stay tuned for those. But if you want to watch any of the past prediction videos I made this year, you can go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I just did one about Paw Patrol 2, the Paw Patrol movie 2 getting 2023 release date, same month as Dune Part 2, I might add. I should add. So I talked about that, but if you want to watch any of the past recap videos, no, not recap, the last cancel videos I've done on any of these October movies, because I know for a fact I've covered some of these movies to death. I covered Dune several times. I've covered Halloween Kills several times. Actually, only like twice, really. No Time to Die, I covered a lot. Same goes for Venom 2. I covered those so many times. So if you want to watch those videos to just see all those various release date changes, you can go right ahead and just watch all the episodes. There's now 87, so you have a lot to watch. But yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.